Warm greetings and blessings to you and your loved ones. My name is Naima Penniman, and I'm honored to serve as Program Director here at Soulfire Farm. We are an Afro-Indigenous community farm dedicated to ending racism and seeding sovereignty in the food system. And we're based on Mohican territory in upstate New York. And I am excited to be celebrating Ujima with you today. Collective work and responsibility. This principle encourages us to work cooperatively to strengthen the mental, physical, and spiritual health of our families and communities, understanding that our well-being is inextricably tied to the well-being of our families, our neighborhoods, nation, and our shared planet. And one essential ingredient to our collective well-being, we know, is having plenty of healthy food to eat. Unfortunately, it is all too common for our people to go hungry and to suffer from diet-related illness because of lack of access to fresh food. 1 in 3 Black children experience food insecurity, and Black folks, along with our Indigenous and Latinx siblings, are 3 times more likely to go hungry than white folks, and it's no accident. Down where we are, food is used as a political weapon, says Fannie Lou Hamer, beloved ancestor, civil rights activist, and freedom fighter. But if you have a pig in your backyard, if you have some vegetables in your garden, you can feed yourself and your family and nobody can push you around, she said. Fannie Lou Hamer embodied the Ujima principle of cooperation, collective work, and responsibility. A former sharecropper herself, she took in sharecroppers who'd been kicked off their land, and along with other poor Black farmers, they created a cooperative farm in the 1960s that 1,500 families belonged to. It was called Freedom Farm Cooperative in Sunflower County, Mississippi. And they grew vegetables like cucumbers, peas, butter beans, squash, and collard greens, and raised thousands of pigs to help feed themselves and collectivize their economic power. This idea that to truly be free, we need to feed ourselves became the basis of the work here at Soulfire Farm. We use Afro-Indigenous farming practices to grow a diverse bounty of vegetables, fruits, herbs, eggs, and chicken that we share with members of our community. And the harvest of the land is boxed up every week and brought directly to the doorsteps of the people who need it most in our community. Refugees, immigrants, people who are surviving food apartheid and state violence, and folks can pay whatever they can afford down to zero for this life-giving food. And we're talking about 25,000 pounds of naturally grown food every season that we work together to raise and distribute to take responsibility for the collective well-being of our community. Now, Fannie Lou Hamer also said, if you give a hungry man food, he will eat it. But if you give him land, he will grow his own food. And with this in mind, we are also supporting our neighbors in the city to start their own home gardens. In light of the pandemic, we ramped up our efforts to support 40 families in our region to grow some of their own food and medicine. And we did this by drawing on community collaboration, Ujima, with the support of 25 volunteers to enable the participation of our elders, people with disabilities and chronic illness, and other folks for whom home gardening would be inaccessible. And we provided the seeds, the seedlings, the soil, compost, supplies, as well as crop planning and ongoing guidance for our neighbors to reclaim their food sovereignty in a time of extreme food scarcity. We see this work as a continuation of a long legacy of BIPOC growers who developed alternative food systems to sustain their communities. Ujima instructs us to build and maintain our community together and to make our brothers and sisters' problems our own problems and to solve them together. And I know we have a lot of problems to solve, and also that we have so much creativity and power and brilliance when we combine forces. Together we can do this. So now I'm going to demonstrate how you can preserve your own food for the wintertime, just like Mama Hamer taught us. She said, if you have 400 quarts of greens and gumbo soup can for the winter, no one can push you around or tell you what to say or do. So let's get to it. To free ourselves, we must feed ourselves. So I'm gonna show you how to make sauerkraut. It requires very little special equipment, is fairly easy, economical, and the results are dependably delicious. It's a versatile condiment that can be used to add a zingy, fresh flavor, as well as more nutrients and probiotics to just about any meal. So we'll start with 1 head of cabbage. I'm using white cabbage, but you could use red cabbage or Napa cabbage just as fine. And other than that, all we need is salt. And we're gonna start by cutting the cabbage in half and then slicing out the core and the stem and removing the outer, any bruised leaves, and slicing the cabbage into ribbons or small pieces. And sauerkraut is made by a process called lactofermentation. And there is beneficial bacteria present on the surface of the cabbage already. And in fact, this is true for all fruits and vegetables. And Lactobacillus is one of those bacteria, which is the same bacteria you find in yogurt and many other cultured products. Lactofermentation has been used for centuries to preserve seasonal vegetables beyond their standard shelf life. And this fermentation process itself is very safe and reliable and allows us to keep our sauerkraut for at least 6 months in the fridge. And besides preserving the cabbage, this fermentation process also transforms it into something incredibly tasty and gives it additional health benefits. Lactofermentation is the process that turns cucumbers into pickles, cabbage into sauerkraut, and is also the secret behind traditional Korean kimchi. And the way lactofermentation works is because it creates extreme pH environments, and the salty alkaline brine eliminates harmful bacteria and encourages the good bacteria to start fermenting the food. And that bacteria creates lactic acid and creates a low pH environment that harmful bacteria cannot survive in. Lacto-fermented foods are rich in probiotics, which help to improve the health of our gut, the entire digestive tract, the stomach, the small and large intestines, the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas. And this gut microbiome, the health of this part of our bodies, is directly connected to the health of our brains and our mental health. So I'm cutting the cabbage with a knife. You can also use a food processor or a mandolin if you have it, but you want to get tiny pieces and then place it in a large bowl. We'll add salt, and the amount of salt depends on how big your cabbage is. So it's 1.5 to 2 teaspoons per pound of cabbage. So you'll sprinkle the right amount of salt over the cabbage, and that's all you need. If you like, you could add spices. Here I'm adding some crushed red pepper flakes and some caraway seeds. I'm also adding some freshly minced garlic. You can add juniper berries, whatever you like, and you can also keep it simple and just do salt and it will be delicious. I'm going to massage it together to mix up all the flavors and then let it sit for 15 minutes to help to draw out the liquid that's in the cabbage. Now I'm gonna massage the cabbage with my clean hands for a few minutes to help the cabbage release more liquid. And then I will pack the cabbage firmly into a very clean glass quart jar. And the cleanliness is important to minimize the amount of other bacteria that will be competing in this process. I'm using a circle cutout of one of my discarded cabbage leaves to help pack down the cabbage, and this stone pestle to help to press it down. You can also use your hand or any other heavy object, and pressing it down firmly so it starts releasing its juices. Sauerkraut is one of my favorite fermented foods. The flavor is quite neutral, so it goes with a lot of meals, and unless you add a lot of chili peppers like I did, it's not spicy like some other ferments. It's really good to eat early in the morning. It helps to clean out your digestive tract if you just have a bite before you take anything else. Or sometimes I put it on top of eggs. You can add it to toast or a burrito or salads or sandwiches. It goes with just about anything. So you can just put it out on the dinner table each night and remind you to eat some. And if the brine doesn't completely cover the cabbage, then you can top it off with some more brine, which is a solution of salt water. 1 teaspoon of salt per cup of water. I'm screwing a lid onto the jar, and I'm not screwing it all the way tight because there's going to be a lot of activity and pressure release, and if it's too tight, the air bubbles won't be able to escape. I'm placing the jar on a small plate, and this will prevent, when it spills over inevitably, it will catch any of the overflow. I'm gonna keep this jar at room temperature for about 3 days, and at least once a day, I'm gonna check on the sauerkraut to make sure the cabbage is still covered in brine, and if not, I will add additional brine. Once fermentation begins, we'll start to see some bubbles froth up to the surface, and it'll start to develop a distinct sauerkraut smell. Once fermentation has been underway for a couple of days, then we can transfer it to the refrigerator. And I like to wait at least a week or 2 for the flavor to develop, but you can eat it right away. The amount of time before eating it is really a taste preference. The longer you wait, the more flavorful it will be. And once you get the hang of this recipe, you can start experimenting with fermenting other vegetables as well. Ginger carrot kraut, zucchini beet kraut. The options are endless. And remember, all you need is vegetables, salt, and time. The results are so delicious and so life-giving. I hope you enjoy. Happy fermenting and happy Kwanzaa. Wishing you warmth, nourishment, and togetherness this Kwanzaa.